Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Charles Aniekolu. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, with the coronavirus pandemic accelerating around the world, Africa seems to be bucking the trend. According to the African Centers for Disease Control, the number of reported new infections has been going down by about 10% a week, and the continent as a whole has recorded about 1.4 million cases and around 34,000 deaths since March, much lower than Europe, Asia or the Americas. So what factors are at play here? We'll speak to the Director General of the West African Health Organization, WAHO. And later, as pharmaceutical research and development in Africa generally continues to exhibit the worst performance in the world, with very little local drug production and more than 80% reliance on imports, we ask whether the coronavirus pandemic will be the defining moment and the turning point in the fight to improve pharmaceutical R&D in Nigeria, for example. We'll speak to the chairman of the board of Nigeria's National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. Coming up, well, in a moment we will be talking to the Director General of the West African Health Organization. But first, according to all the indices, pharmaceutical research and development in Africa exhibits the worst performance in the world, with few countries on the continent able to spend the $40 a year per person that the WHO considers the minimum for basic health care. This would obviously have been greatly improved by pharmaceutical research and development as well as local drug production. But Africa, and by extension Nigeria, have an exceedingly long way to go. Fewer than 40 out of the 54 African countries have some level of pharmaceutical production, with most relying on imports. Nigeria's National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research, NIPRD, is trying to change this by drawing attention to the need to improve local medicinal research and production, especially in the wake of COVID-19. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the chairman of the board of Nigeria's National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Dr. John Alfa. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Now, the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, of which you are the chairman of the governing board, has been in existence now for more than 30 years. What standout research and development can you point to in that time that your institute has done that has really made a difference to medicine security in Nigeria?
Thank you very much for that question. As you rightly said, yes, NIPRD has been in establishment for over 30 years, precisely in 1989. In terms of research output,
I thought it was 1987.
So, well, the order was pronounced in 1987, but commencement was in 1989. So, in terms of what stands out over the years, you will recall many people are, particularly those who have sickle cell patients. There's this group was Niprisan, which is now named Nicosan, because we now have a collaboration with M&B. So that one was developed into full drug, and for over the years it has been helping a lot of patients. But beyond that, NIPRD over the years has also been ISO certified, which means that our laboratory is qualified to carry out analysis on drugs. And that analysis, the result will be acceptable all over the world. Beyond that, there are some phytomedicines that have also been, put in place, but are yet to be commercialized, because the Nigerian climate space appear not to be well informed about the need to partner with research organizations in terms of commercializing products that have been developed. As we speak now, Immune, which is one of the phytomedicines that has been developed by NIPRID, is about to go into clinical trials. We are repurposing it for use in COVID-19. A couple of other things have also emerged. In terms of capacity building, NIPRID has over 70 PhDs. So in terms of capacity, we are there. And the phytomedicine aspect, yes, even though we have not gotten to where we want to be, but there are some that have been done over the years.
So why is the perception persistent that the NIPRD, or NIPRID as you call it, consistently underperforms? What is responsible for that? Even your speech at your conference just a couple of days ago suggested that NIPRID is underperforming.
NIPRID is underperforming. I use one word, Goliath, trying to sink David.
Yes, I saw that.
You saw that. Now the issue is that all over the world, you know, research organizations are adequately funded. But I can tell you that there is a lot of funding deficit in NIPRID. And when I took over last year, in November, I decided to have a facility tour of NIPRID. And what I saw was beyond what my expectation was in terms of negative feeling. There is a lot of structural deficit in NIPRID. If you get there, you know, the buildings are not what they are supposed to be. I must give kudos to those who have been managing that place over the years. The power supply is epileptic, and oftentimes for them to be able to run the laboratories, the power, I mean, they have to switch on to generators. And it will surprise you that you get to some of the laboratories. I got to one of them, the switch from the wall was on, but the fan that was there was not on. The AC, they couldn't put it on because they said they have to ration it. And so even, you know, funds to be able to buy adequate chemicals, they have to struggle with it. And some of the equipment that are supposed to be there are also not in place.
Well, I mean, that seems to contradict what you said earlier, because you gave this kind of, you know, glowing tribute to the institute about the things that they've achieved and the things that they're in the process of achieving. Are you saying that they're doing them in spite of these challenges?
Yeah, that is a real struggle.
Right.
It's a real struggle. I wouldn't say glowing tribute, but I wanted to paint a picture that, yes, the early years, when NIPRID was set up, there was initially good funding. But over the years, it dwindled. And so I ever stated it in my paper that, you know, there is a lot of underperforming. And that is because of lack of adequate funding. So it has been a lot of excruciating battle, you know, for those who are there, the research fellows, to be able to come up with it's a lot of ingenuity to be able to manage to do what.
Yes, I can imagine. Because, I mean, if you look at something like traditional medicine, for example, I mean, one would have thought that this is an area of natural advantage for NIPRID because it's in your backyard.
Yes.
And that by now you would have pioneered breakthrough science-led research that would have helped to mainstream some of those traditional medicines along with the value chain. But obviously that's not happening, is it?
That is not happening optimally.
Right.
Optimally in the sense that, yes, there have been some collaborations with traditional medicine practitioners, but I agree with you that it is not where it's supposed to be. And oftentimes, because of inadequate funding, when the traditional medicine practitioners bring their samples for analysis, for instance, for evaluation, and you ask them to pay, after some time you don't see them again. But if NIPRID is adequately funded, the level of collaboration would have been for us to provide technical support to these people, and then they'll be able to blow up whatever, you know, medicines they're also developing. And also, as I said earlier, yes, there are a lot of pipeline projects which we have. Because when immediately I took over, I said we should have pipeline projects. That is, we should have something that is on the table, and then we should have something that is coming in. So we have about 33 projects that are supposed to bring out, a lot of phytomedicines.
Right, but let me just return to that traditional medicine thing, because of course the danger is that if somebody comes to you with a traditional sort of remedy or medicine or whatever, and you're unable to test it, which is partly what your mandate is, which is to say to the Nigerian people, yes, we've tested it, this is good enough, or not. The danger is that that person will simply go back, because you obviously don't have monitoring capacity either. I mean, they'll just go back and use the medicines.
I agree with you. It's a danger to the society, to all of us.
And recently, the WHO agreed to rules for testing herbal remedies that we've been hearing about, COVID-19 herbal remedies. The WHO saying that as long as they are proven to be efficacious, that they should go ahead. And that's a change of tack, because previously they'd poured scorn on these types of traditional remedies. Are there any such remedies that NIPRD, NIPRID has in its sights?
As we speak, yeah, I am aware of that. There is an WHO expert committee for evaluation of traditional medicine. I just finished my board meeting on Tuesday, between Monday and Tuesday, and it was one of the things that came up. Yes, I would say that right now, they have not started, they are receiving proposals from different people on, medicines to be evaluated. To answer your question directly, NIPRID has not submitted any product for evaluation yet, but we have some work that are ongoing, and when it reaches the critical point when it needs to be, submitted for evaluation, it will be submitted.
Right, because I understand that, for example, that there was some research coming out of another country, I think one of the island nations, that you were part of the research that authenticated that. But
right.
We'll talk about that when we come back. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the battle to improve pharmaceutical research and development in Nigeria. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyekolu. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has exposed Africa's inadequate and very limited capacity to manufacture and supply essential drugs and personal protective equipment needed to curb the disease. Although pharmaceutical products are currently manufactured in countries such as South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and to some extent Nigeria, as a whole, Africa currently imports more than 80% of its pharmaceutical and medical requirements, and according to analysts, this is quite simply unsustainable over the medium to long term. Nigeria has repeatedly tried to address its over-reliance on imports of pharmaceutical products, which is why it set up the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development in 1987. But since then, in spite of the fact that the NIPRD has repeatedly come up with all sorts of research and manufacturing plans to boost local pharmaceutical production, nothing much has come of it. So why can't Nigeria manufacture most of the medicines and medical equipment it needs? And the chairman of the board of Nigeria's National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Dr. John Alfa, is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And before we went on break, we were talking about the challenge of traditional medicines and the fact that the WHO has actually given the go-ahead for herbal remedies related to COVID-19 to proceed. But you were making the point that your research organization, NIPRID, is not really in the forefront of that, when it really ought to be.
Yes, Well, I have chronicled some of the challenges, but we don't want to sit and be complaining. And so right now we are re-strategizing. As we speak, we are also training, taking a training on phytomedicines to various states of the country. We've done one in Kwara State. We've done one in Osun State. Next week we are going to Kogi State, and thereafter we're also going to Taraba. This is all to also pull the traditional medicine practitioners and those who are also interested in going into it, to give them some basic training. For those who are already there, how to improve on whatever they're having, and how to even get about listing with NAFDAC. Because it is when it is listed with NAFDAC, it has been certified that toxicity is okay to be administered on humans, that you can go into clinical trials with it. But beyond that, as we are also embarking on aggressive, style of bringing funds into NIPRID, NIPRID is being repositioned, even in COVID, because what we did yesterday, repositioning NIPRID, to be able to carry out effective research in pandemic and non-pandemic times.
Yeah, but you see, the point is this. I mean, most Nigerians listening to you and a lot of people around the world will simply roll their eyes, because, I mean, it just sounds like one of those, boring conferences where people all sit around and they say all kinds of things, and yet when you go to the market, I mean, clearly you're not doing, I mean, your products, the result of your work is not being seen there, and that's really the point, isn't it? I mean, what I want to ask you is, we're the Nigerian people. I mean, talk to us. How frustrating is it for you, chairman of the board of a research institute that's supposed to be at the forefront of medicinal research, medical equipment research in Nigeria, and by extension in Africa? You should be leading the charge. How frustrating is it that you're not really fulfilling your mandate?
Thank you very much. You are getting me charged. Actually, it's been very frustrating. The budgetary provision for NIPRID over the years has been through the yearly appropriation by the National Assembly, and also within the ministry. Yes, I must say, for NIPRID to have existed for over 30 years without being closed down, at least the government has tried.
Yeah, but it's
to sustain it. But what I'm saying is this.
Yeah.
There is this concept of envelope, which the ministry gives. So whatever you have itemized, and then put your own, say for instance, you want 1 billion. And then, of course, when it goes to the ministry, there is already a fixed amount that comes to you. So if it is 200 million that is coming to you, that is it. That is what will come to you. And so that is why I say there's a lot of funding deficit.
Right.
And so we are now saying that the government funding should be structured in a better fashion, so that more pool of funds will come to this. And as I said, well, one of the ways we are thinking is for import duties on drugs, being imported into this country, on pharmaceutical raw materials being imported into this country, on pharmaceutical equipment being imported into this country, a certain percentage of that should statutorily go to NIPRID for research and development. And so if you do it that way, it's already structured. And so there's a pool of fund, coming into NIPRID. And so you are adequately positioned.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do, what you want to do.
So in a sense, COVID-19 has presented new opportunities for Nigeria to correct the mistakes of the past.
Absolutely.
And reposition institutes like yours to better actualize their mandate.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, we are not limiting ourselves, to only government in terms of funding. And that's why we had to organize this webinar. If you notice, we invited one professor of pharmaceutical technology, a Nigerian, who is doing wonders in Canada. He's been able to produce, he has up to 100 patents and over, and is doing wonderfully well all over the world. So we had to invite him to, give us a talk on how to reposition NIPRID for pandemic and non-pandemic times. So, but going, by the way, as far as that is concerned, we have also invited some private entrepreneurs, partners that can also see the need for private sector to come into funding R&D of pharmaceuticals. And I'm glad to say that...
yeah, but the point is that the private sector is going to fund their own research. I mean, you've got quite a number of them around already that are doing that. I mean, the people who've set up a lot of the testing places for COVID and so on, many of them are privately owned.
Yeah.
And they're doing their own research. They've got much more sophisticated equipment. What I'm trying to understand, because, I mean, obviously the government is crucial. You're a government department. Now that COVID-19 has led to this deeper deliberation, or at least we think it is, on designing and implementing better healthcare strategies in Nigeria, are you seeing greater commitment from the government and the private sector? I mean, you mentioned the private sector, and if so, what form or shape is this commitment taking?
Let me start from the private sector, then I'll go to the government. We are now, sensitizing the private sector, because all over the world, researches are funded by grants, both from the private sector and from the government sector. And so somebody, a philanthropist could come and say, okay, on cancer medicines, I want to deploy this grant. And so proposals will be sent, and then the one that is credible will be approved, and then such grants come, and it's specifically for cancer research, and so for other things. So we are now sensitizing people that apart from the government, private sector can come in. And so we also have to sensitize the PMG man, that is a pharmaceutical manufacturing group of Nigerian manufacturers, that because historically they were partners in setting up NIPRID. They provided the seed fund along with the PSN. And so we told them that you can't give birth to a baby and then abandon that baby. And so they came in, and we had an endowment session yesterday. And as we speak, the PMG man gave an endowment of 50 million yesterday towards R&D of pharmaceuticals. And then the chairman of Fitsin Pharmaceuticals, who is also the current chairman of PMG man, also gave a 50 million endowment. This is the first time the private sector is coming to support NIPRID. And so it was a good thing that historically that we came out with yesterday. And some other organizations also made a pledge that, yes, they'll go back to the organization, discuss with them, because of corporate governance, so that they'll see what they can come in.
I want to thank you very much indeed for
coming now in and going to the government aspect.
No, we can't get into it. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But thank you very much indeed, Dr. John Alfa, Chairman of the Board of the Nigerian Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, as we'll speak to the Director General of the West African Health Organization, WAHO, about the falling number of reported new infections of the coronavirus in Africa. Stay with us.